Welcome to I Feel Like.
Your ultimate guide to navigating life as a young adult.
We're your hosts,
Anna,
Dan,
and Evan.
And we're here to share our experiences and provide advice on everything from surviving college and forming relationships,
the situational etiquette, and maintaining a social life.
I feel like it's time to start the podcast. Hi, welcome to this week's episode. Today, we'll be talking about long-distance relationships. We'll share our previous experiences and some things we learned that can help you in your relationship.
Just to preface, I think we should all kind of explain our individual situations that we were in, just to lay some groundwork as to where we're coming from and our advice and stuff. So I guess I'll start. Freshman year of college, coming into it, I was in a relationship, and at that point it had probably maybe been a little less than a year. So I came into college with a high school relationship, and it lasted, I think, like all of freshman year. So I guess I have a year's worth of a long distance relationship to talk about.
I'm similar. I was also in a relationship in high school for a year and then going into college. That relationship lasted until that summer of freshman year, so about a year and a half, basically.
For me, I was kind of in an opposite boat. When I started college, I didn't want to go into college with a relationship. I kind of wanted to just start out fresh. So everything from high school, I kind of ended before I got to college, so I could just kind of start over. So I guess that's a new, fresh perspective here.
So I think it's definitely important just to say, I feel like we usually say this, that all the information we give can definitely vary. I'm sure everyone's in a different boat in like the length of the relationship, what like, how strong the relationship is, like maybe, I don't know what else to say. It can all vary. So I think it's just important to know that the advice we give is really just based off of those relationships that we happen to be in at the time and how that worked for us, and what schools we went to, the distance we were actually at, with our partners. So it was definitely, situational.
For legal reasons, we are not relationship experts, relationship therapists, and we're probably definitely biased on based on what happened to us personally. So take our advice, don't take our advice. It's up to you.
Yeah, everything that we're probably going to talk about is, I'm assuming, going to be very personal based. This is really just our experience. Every experience with a long distance relationship, though, can be different. Some of them can be really great. Some of them can be even worse than what you might hear about today. So it really is all across the board, and just kind of take what we say with a grain of salt.
I don't want to put Dan on the spot here, but I feel like that's the great place to start on terms of why he did choose to continue his relationship, or why me and Anna, or why Dan didn't choose to, but why me and Anna kind of did choose to. And I feel like that's important, just when for our listeners, if they're making this decision, I feel like that's the first place to start, to just think to yourself if you actually do want to continue this into college.
I think for me, my biggest thing was that I knew that there was kind of a stigma about long distance relationships, especially like in college. You always hear about a bunch of issues happening, people just kind of falling out, they're not communicating as frequently, things like that. And I just honestly didn't want to deal with that. Everyone from high school was great, and I that was a very positive experience for the most part in my life. But I knew, even before I got to college, like a year before, that I just wanted to go to college in a fresh start. I didn't want to deal with all this drama. I knew that I would be stressed and busy enough with all the new stuff of becoming a freshman, making new friends, like acclimating to college, things like that. And I just personally didn't want to have to deal with managing a long-term relationship while I started college.
And I think that's a great point. We talked about that last episode, like making friends in college. Like, there's definitely a lot to college that you have to get acclimated to. And that can be a lot to juggle that in a relationship, especially if it's long distance, if you're not going to the same schools, it's pretty tough. And I don't want to say that all the rumors are true about how hard it is for a long distance relationship, but it's definitely, very different. And it's definitely something that you're going to have to, I would say, work at, and definitely, something that you're going to have to keep in mind more than, a high school relationship.
I would say that I guess when it did come time to go our separate ways and both go on our different college paths, I mean, obviously, I wasn't thrilled that it was going to be long distance. I don't know that that's anyone's goal in a relationship. But I mean, I think when you're in that situation and you're so young, of course you think, yeah, like, my relationship's going to be fine. We're not going to break up. We're different, like you think you're kind of this exception, which I'm sure, it has worked out for a lot of different people. But I think what makes going into a long distance relationship starting college so difficult is, you're really just starting life. Like you're finding out who you are and, being tied down to someone or maybe like a version of yourself that is kind of in the past. I think it's just a really difficult situation that is different than if maybe you were older and had a job and you were in a different phase in your life and you had a long distance relationship.
And I'll say I'm a little worried to say this because I feel like I might change my mind as we discuss more. But I feel like my initial impression is to say, if it, you that maybe you should give it a shot. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely hard and it definitely might fall out and you might have to deal with that. But I feel like I don't know if I don't think I necessarily regret doing that long distance relationship and trying that. I feel like I did definitely get a sense of not confirmation, whatever, that it ended the way it did. And I just felt like, oh, I did give it a shot and it just wasn't working out like that.
I think on the other hand, though, like for me, I also don't have any regrets about ending things before college. Like there was never a moment where I was like, maybe it could have worked out, anything like that. Because if it was truly meant to work out, then I guess after college or when you're an upperclassman in college, things like that, you would get back together, things like that. So I think that yes, as you can already see, this is really just based off of our personal experiences. I think that you just kind of have to analyze your own relationship maybe in a way and see like what would be best for both of us in this situation. Is staying together maybe worth all the hassle of trying to manage a long-term relationship?
Obviously, we're not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but I mean, I would say if you and your partner are interested in continuing the relationship when you go to college, why not? I mean, yeah, I don't regret going into it at all. I mean, it was kind of like Evan said. I feel like almost just the natural next step in the relationship. And even though we've since broken up and it didn't work out, I guess it was just, I don't know, I hate to be cliche, but just like part of the journey or whatever. And I think work trying to make it work and then ultimately having it fail is better than breaking it off because you're scared and then maybe always having that thought in the back of your head, well, what if it worked? So, I mean, I don't think there's any shame in like trying it out or coming into college in a relationship.
We kind of talked about this in the last episode when we were talking about making friends in college, but like, did you guys ever find it comforting having like that significant other to talk to? Like, especially in the beginning of college, where it's like you might not know anyone, but you still had this one person who you would frequently communicate with?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I definitely did find it comforting just having someone there that I could complain to off the bat about maybe struggling or anything like that. Or, when you're not super close with some friends, it's definitely helpful to still have that person that you can go to. But I wanted to add that maybe I should have prefaced this in my, intro that my relationship long distance wise was like a good now I'm trying to think. It was like, halfway around a
Yeah, you guys were far. Like it's not
like
you could just
like a
do a
good
weekend
yeah, it was a
trip.
good like day drive or 2 day drive, while Anna's was a little closer. So, I think just going back to what we were saying, I don't think the distance was necessarily anything that made me worried. It was more of like the physical distance that made me worried. It was more of just, I think no matter how far away you are, it is just tougher and you're not going to be able to see each other every day. And that's just kind of what makes it hard. Um,
Yeah, I feel like when you think about long distance, I feel like what comes to my mind at least is like people who are like, "Oh, we're on the other side of the country," and it's like you have all the different time zones, things like that. But like once I was in college, I guess I did kind of have a long-ish distance relationship, and I wouldn't necessarily call it long distances, and they were so far away, but like they were, I think, 3 towns over or something like that. So it was a quick like train ride there, but still, like even that was kind of tough, just trying to plan phone calls, things like that. So I think these are definitely factors to consider if you're kind of thinking if you want to go into a long distance relationship.
Yeah, going off of that, even if you and your partner are in the same area, like your hometown or whatever, but at different schools, even that is kind of enough to maybe like cause a little bit of a rift between you two. Just because, before college, I was in high school with my partner. We saw each other every day, hung out every weekend, had lunch together at school. So even just not seeing someone every day, I guess, can change a dynamic, or it can make things kind of different. And I think what makes it especially hard going into college is, you're trying to make new friends and get acclimated and set your roots down. So you don't always have time to call someone every night or schedule these long like Zoom dates or calls and stuff. So it can be kind of hard to juggle the two, and it almost feels kind of weird in that like you're trying to establish something new, but you're kind of like carrying around some old, I don't want to say old baggage, but I don't know. I guess that's kind of the truth.
well, it's not old baggage if it works, but if it doesn't work, then maybe it is some old baggage. But Dan had mentioned earlier that um, for him, it was kind of worth it, or not worth it, but it made sense to kind of burn that bridge, and if after college, if he wanted to get back together, he could. But I think it's definitely something to consider there where, if you had dated for a year, saying, oh, maybe we'll get together after college, that can definitely burn some bridges. That might not be your situation. There might be some hard feelings there. So definitely still be aware of, you might not get another shot at this. You might need to try it out now because you might not get to try it later. But even if you do try it and it fails, I've heard other stories of people being like, oh, the long distance didn't work, and both of the parties go like, oh, maybe let's give it a shot after college. Like, we were great together when we were in person, but the distance didn't work. But like, let's do our own thing for college, but maybe we'll try it after that. So it's really just about having that communication and being on the same page and just being aware of what you do or don't want.
And I think it depends on the nature of the relationship, which obviously you and the person in the relationship are going to be the only ones in a position to evaluate this. But I know in my relationship, I was just kind of in that phase where I was so sure it was going to work out. And you're, like I said, you're young, and it kind of just seems like this is destiny. We're going to be together forever. We're going to get married and be happy. So in my mind, there was no thought of even breaking it off. It was just seemed like this is just something we have to get through to get our happy ending. You know what I mean? So there wasn't even, I guess I was just so caught up in it that the possibility of a breakup didn't even cross my mind.
And it's definitely kind of fantasizing that too, where it's like, oh, we'll make it through the distance and we'll be happier because of that. And it's like a fairy tale kind of, you know what I mean? But yeah.
Like, I don't want to say that I was being realistic, but I feel like because I was thinking the way I was thinking, I was kind of able to get a nice happy ending. Maybe not like oh, we're gonna get married and ride off into the sunset together, but like the last like couple weeks before I moved into college, those were great. I have great memories from there. And when like we finally said goodbye and all that, like it was very amicable. We were very like friendly, happy for each other. And it was a clear like this is over, but like we ended in a good way, not like oh, now we're mad at each other and things like that. Like it was a good breakup.
I think it's fine to be realistic if that's the kind of person you are, but I also think there's no shame in kind of getting caught up in it. I mean, it was my first relationship, first partner, so
Yeah, no
and I was
shame at
like
all.
18 years old. So I think when you're that young and it's your first relationship, you really idealize everything, which you're young. It is like a thing that only happens once in your life. So even if you're not realistic about it, so what? It's fun, something you'll never get back.
Yeah, and that's you're I don't want to keep reiterating this, but like going off of the young thing, like I doubt you're finding the one at your first relationship at the age of 18. Like there's probably going to be something else. So I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping this relationship that, worked going so that you can learn a little more, maybe learn what not to do if long distance ever came up again. Like there's nothing wrong with trying it and failing. But there's also nothing wrong with, backing out if, you don't think it will work.
I think we should move on to some tips about if you're in the situation, how to get through it, but how to make the most of it. Because I think most people would agree that it's not ideal, but it's definitely doable if you're committed. And we've been kind of negative for the first 10-15 minutes. So we're gonna try to be a little bit more positive about this now. I think
I,
my first tip would be um definitely make time for the other person. I know it can be hard, especially when you're starting college or you're in a new job or new town, but just setting aside time to text or call, FaceTime, however you stay connected, I think that's important. Just because it's too easy to say I can't right now, I'm busy, and to just get caught up in what you're doing in the moment. But I think the more you kind of make excuses to not talk or you ignore each other, that's just kind of like a bad, it's almost like the beginning of the end.
I don't want to go back, but I just want to say that I don't think we were being negative before. I think it's just important to talk about all those things to kind of clear up some myths and just make everyone comfortable with whatever situation you're in because it really can be anything. But going off of Anna's thing, um, it's definitely important to communicate. And I guess I'll share my experience. Like, we kind of made it a point to call every day. And looking back on that, I'm not sure that was necessarily the best decision, though. Like, I don't think it, um, I don't know. It was definitely tough sometimes, when you're with friends to kind of step away and do that. And on one hand, maybe that did strengthen things and maybe that did keep it alive. But on the other hand, it definitely was also putting a strain on things to kind of make it a chore almost.
I would definitely agree with that. I don't think I made like an arrangement to schedule out like we're gonna call every day or something like that. But there were definitely times where I as much as I hate to say it, like I didn't want to talk to them or I didn't want to call them, not because I didn't like them or because of whatever reason, but maybe I was having fun with friends or I genuinely was really busy. It's definitely hard. I don't know if this is just my opinion, but I think every day is kind of a lot, like to have a full on call. But I mean, that's just my opinion. If that works out for you, then that's fine. But I think there's kind of like a fine line between checking in and staying in touch and being updated versus like, I don't want to say being obsessive, but like if you're texting someone all day, I mean, I don't know. I feel like that might be a little much, especially if you are in a new environment and you actually have stuff to do. It's not like you're just sitting around. But I don't know. Again, that's just my opinion. Some people might want that.
Here, let me say that I think it definitely, part of the distance of it is that when you do, have time with that other person you're texting or you're talking on the phone, it definitely takes you out of whatever you're doing, because they're not there and you have to explain like everything, you really have to catch them up because they don't know what's going on in your life, and it definitely takes you out of what you're doing to have to always brief them on what's going on in your life, because they won't know otherwise. You're not in person, and it's not super easy to share what your day was all the time, because a lot of it's kind of hard to understand when they're not there. Um, so it's definitely just tough to always, have that time there when it is kind of a lot to do.
Like, I don't want to keep asking questions, I guess, but I just genuinely haven't experienced this, so I am just a little curious. Like, do you think that those kind of little annoyances, like Evan was just saying, like things like that, kind of all added up to eventually lead to a breakup? Or like, could you guys get by on those things, or like were they okay, I guess?
I don't That's a good question. I don't think it's as I don't think there's like a cut and dry answer. I don't know that the annoyance was in texting or calling. I think it was more like I'm creating this life for myself that doesn't involve you. I'm making friends at school. We're in two different places doing two completely different things. And it is almost like you're kind of just not fitting into my life anymore. And it was nothing, and it wasn't that they were doing anything wrong. I think it was just I'm changing. Maybe I'm not the same as I was in high school. Maybe I want something different. And again, if you don't, at least in my opinion, and for me, if I don't see you a lot, I don't want to sound mean. And I don't want to say that I almost like forget you if I don't see you a lot, but I don't know.
I think it's tough to distinguish
I
between
probably sound so mean.
I think it's tough to distinguish between this was, you know, our relationship ended because of the long distance, or our relationship ended because of each other. You know what I mean? And it's definitely tough looking back on it to be like, oh, well, that was annoying, but it's like, did that make me like him less, or was that just like, I like what did end it? I don't know.
Yeah, it's honestly hard to pinpoint something. I think definitely the distance did play a factor. I think if we went to the same college and we saw each other more than we did, I honestly don't know what would have happened. Maybe it would have, maybe I'm not saying that we would have ended up together, but maybe the relationship would have gone on for longer. But also I still wouldn't be surprised if it ended, if we even were together. I just think and again, you're so young, you don't even know what you want at that point.
And it's tough because we're talking about our side. There's a completely other person of this that
True.
maybe has completely
And we were both the
different.
ones to end it. So we weren't, I don't know.
So maybe they're like, oh, it wasn't a strain and they loved it, and maybe the distance wasn't a factor. But for Anna and I and our introverted selves, we were creating this new life. I think that was funny what Anna was saying. But yeah, basically it's a good point where she was just, I never thought about it like that, but college really is just a whole new experience, and you really are like becoming an adult and like making a new world for yourselves. And with them not there in person, it's definitely hard to fit them in. Like, talking to them about it isn't really them being in it. Um, it's like telling your parents how your day was, like they're not at the high school with you, they're not friends with your friends, like they're just there. So yeah, it's definitely tough.
Did you guys ever regret kind of going into this long-term relationship when these things would come up? Or long-term, long distance?
What do you mean? Like, did we regret
Like, like just like a
being in a
stupid example,
relationship?
like Evan's like idea where he's like, oh, now I have to explain everything to you. Like in times like that, did you guys kind of regret your decision to maybe not end it earlier? Or was it just kind of an annoyance in the moment?
On one hand, it's like I personally love talking about my day, so it's like maybe I didn't care that much.
So it doesn't matter who you're talking to, as long as you're
As
telling
long as I'm
someone
talking,
about your
yeah.
day. As long as someone's willing to listen, Evan will take it.
So that's so mean. Um, I mean, it's kind of true, but whatever. But yeah, no, I already forget his question because I feel so attacked right now. Anna, you go.
Well, I don't know. I don't really know how to answer the question, but I did want to add about the sharing about your day. I also think that can almost create like an issue in that if maybe my partner, I hear he had a great day and had so much fun, and maybe, I'm struggling, it almost makes you jealous and it kind of makes you feel like they're
Absolutely.
moving on without you. They're having so much fun. They're forgetting about me. I'm just here with no friends, stressed out. It almost like I feel like you compare yourself a lot and you compare your situations a lot. Um, which I guess is kind of a downside of talking about your days. And again, like Evan said, just because I tell you what I did, that doesn't make you there. You didn't experience it. It really like is just a story at that point.
And I don't know if, maybe this is specific to me and Anna again, but like I know I too was also I was pretty jealous, hearing when his day did go well. And it was definitely tough to be like, that doesn't affect me. So
And I think also like in me for an example, um I like hate to say this, but I definitely think I had an easier transition to college than my partner. So again, I hate to say it, but I almost felt like held back in a way, like I had to downplay the friends I was making or the experience I was having so that they didn't feel bad, or if things weren't going well for them, it just kind of weighs you down a little bit. And I think since they were maybe struggling a little bit, it made them more clingy to me, and maybe they expected me to talk to them extra because they were in a rough spot, which, like, I don't know, is not my problem. I know I sound so terrible.
I'm on the
Maybe I'm the
flip
reason we
side.
broke up.
I feel like I was on the flip side where I was the one kind of struggling at first, and definitely seeing him make friends was definitely a little tougher for me. And um it definitely is kind of straining to be like, look at them. And it kind of does weigh you down, and it does kind of like, I don't know about, what they were feeling, but for me it did feel like I was annoying them with, wanting to talk sometimes and needing help. And that definitely did put a strain on things.
Should we do a follow-up where we bring the other pair of the relationships and get their side?
I can't speak for Anna, but I don't know if we want to dwell on it, but I personally would not reach out to my partner or my ex again.
Surprise, I actually got both of your exes on this episode.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't
Oh.
talked to my ex since we broke up, so I don't even know.
I don't want to say that, your long distance relationship is going to end badly. I think, that's just kind of the boat that I was in. I don't think it was the distance. I think it was, just some personal things that maybe didn't make it end the greatest. But that doesn't really have to do with the long distance. And I wouldn't worry about that leading to some really terrible breakup where you'll never be friends again or something like that. Like, you can definitely handle it better than maybe I did.
I feel like from at least like
If you want us to do a breakup episodes, we can work that out in the future.
Honestly, I
Go
feel like
ahead, Dan.
I would have tips for
I
that
could
too.
definitely talk about that. But I feel like, or at least just like from what I'm understanding, it seems like a long distance relationship isn't really that different than a regular relationship. It's just that all the problems are kind of amplified a little bit because of this distance. Is that like wrong in a way,
I
or
don't know if that's wrong. It's just different. It's just kind of a different ball game. Like, you're not gonna be able.
Sports analogies.
Okay, that's the extent of the sport that I can talk about, but it's kind of like, it's just a different environment. Like, you're not gonna be able to, hold each other. You're not gonna be able to like eat a meal together. You're not gonna be able to. They're laughing at me now for saying hold each other, but you know what I mean. They're not there physically sometimes, and it's like it's just different. You have to find other ways to make it up. And I think finding those other ways is where you have the strain, because maybe you don't find a way to make it up, or maybe that way just, you know, doesn't get at the same thing.
I feel like we kind of keep coming back to this question, and I don't know. I really don't have an answer, and I don't know that anyone would, because I think it's just such a unique situation. It might not have been the distance. It could have just been by the second year, the relationship was just kind of fizzling out, and maybe that would have happened if we were still in high school. Who really knows? And like I said earlier, I think going to college is just such a transformative experience that I don't know. Like, I definitely don't think I'm the same person I was in that relationship in high school. And I don't think I want to be that person either. And it's just, there's so many factors, and it's probably a combination of things. It's probably not just the distance or the time period. It was probably a lot of things, and you can't pinpoint one. It was just a lot of factors that came together.
I feel like I also want to say that I feel like nowadays, people are dating later, right? And they're maybe not dating in school. So you're maybe meeting someone on like an app or something or whatever. We've talked about that. But the point is, like, you're probably going to be doing some kind of distance as it is. Like, it might not be like, you know, halfway around the world, but it's still, tough sometimes, I'm sure, to have to drive to see your partner if they're, in a whole nother town 30 minutes away. Like, that's how you're meeting nowadays. You're not always going to meet someone in the same building as you. So I think a lot of these tips still apply where, it's tough to communicate sometimes like that.
I feel like this episode so far has been kind of negative. Do you guys have any other like advice or whatever for like making it work other than like make time for them?
I
Well,
definitely have
yeah, I
advice, but I feel like I was saving that for the rapid fire. If
well, I
we
think the next thing we should talk about is visiting them in person.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's obviously going to depend on how far apart you are, but for me, my partner was probably, I don't know, like less than 2 hours away. It wasn't like that far, but it was definitely a distance where it would require some planning in advance. I mean, I would take like a bus or whatever to get to their campus, or sometimes they would come up to mine. We kind of alternated. I forget how often we tried to do it. I think we tried to do it maybe on like a monthly or every 2 month basis, just because we were close enough that it worked. And I think at that point we still were interested in seeing each other. But I think if you can, it definitely is important to fit in some actual time when you're with them in person and not just over a screen. And that can be fun. It was fun to go down to his college and do some stuff in the city and do some exploring and have a new scenery and do fun stuff. I mean, it wasn't all bad.
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't all bad. And also, we're talking about college here. Like, we're on a budget. We don't all have cars. It's definitely harder to go down and see someone. But if you do, or if you can, like, I would definitely say that that was definitely helpful. I didn't get to do it as much, but I think the few times that it did happen, it was nice. And I would also say that there's no need to like make it a surprise. Like, just plan it out.
Oh, there were like a few surprises, not necessarily with us, but like with some people in our dorm and stuff. And anytime I was involved in a surprise, which somehow like everyone came to me for these surprises, I don't know how I got roped into that. I didn't sign up for that.
Anna was the point person of our friend group for
I
everyone's
don't
significant
know
other.
why that happened. I did not seek that out. I guess that's just what I attract, but yeah, the
surprises can
surprises
be
didn't work out.
they can be
It's not
nice.
as romantic as you think.
Yeah, but it's not as romantic as you think. And also, it's like they might be busy. Like, you might come down and surprise them on a day where they have schoolwork. Like, it's so much better to just figure that out ahead of times, and there's no need to surprise them. I think you're trying to make it something that it might not need to be. You should really just want to be with each other, and you should just plan that out together. And maybe I'm anti surprises and I'm anti gifts. I get it. I'm very negative. I'm all about communicating and planning it all out. But like, I think that's definitely where I come from. Like, I think you should just be open about that.
back on the visits, I think a really good way to make your partner feel like they are kind of like in your life still, or just make them feel like they are part of your routine and they are more familiar with your new situation. I think a great idea is if they come up to visit you, show them your favorite places. If there's like a cafe that you love to go to it with them. So then next time you say that you went there for lunch, they know what you're talking about. And it kind of is more of like a shared experience. Yeah, it makes it a shared experience. It doesn't feel so one sided. So going to your favorite restaurants or going to events in town or something like that, doing that together, I think is a good idea that will make them feel like they're included and like they know what's up.
I think it's not also just for them, it's also for you and trying to fit them in and make it feel for you like they were there or are there. I want to get your opinion too, Anna, because I'm just wondering what your stance on like they come to visit. Yeah, you show them all the places you want them to be included. What's your take on like meeting people though and friends? Like on one hand, I'm like, yeah, it's definitely necessary because you want them to, you want your friends to like them and you want them to be like part of that, but do you have an opinion? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I do have an opinion. I think, especially in college where it's not really like you have your own house or something like that, since you are probably in a dorm and you're really close to other people, I think, first of all, it's inevitable that they're going to meet some of your friends. And second, I think it's a good thing. I mean, I wouldn't make it like the first thing you do necessarily. Like you get off the bus and all your friends are there to greet them. But I think if you feel comfortable and you have the chance to, sure, let them meet with your friends. Maybe I'll go to dinner. But I think above all, they came up or you went down or like whatever the logistics are to be with them, not their friends. So if you want to do like one brief activity or do a meal, that's fine, but don't make it like a friends and a significant other weekend. Just like devote your time to them because they made an effort to see you. So don't make them feel like you don't want to hang out with them by doing stuff with your friends. You can do that a different weekend or a different night.
I'd also say from the friend perspective of this, definitely don't force your significant other into your friend group. I feel like that could definitely bring up like animosity maybe between like your friends and your significant other, and then that could have a strain on your relationship too. So just kind of be gentle with that. Definitely focus on your significant other, maybe less on your significant other being friends with your friends.
No, that I think you both, pretty much summarized it where it's like it's not about it's sure you can meet the friends, but it's not about maybe including them in the friend thing. It's maybe just about including them in your general life in other things. But it is just about being together, just the two of you, really, I think. I feel like there's still so much to talk about, so I think we should probably just move into some rapid fire tips, and maybe this will finally swing it in a positive way for us if we start giving some maybe things that went well for us and maybe things that we could recommend. I could start. The first thing that came to mind for me was we did letters for a little bit, and I think that was definitely I you both are giving me looks that I feel
That's no, that's cute. That
and
is
I feel
cute. I'm a
um
romantic.
but it definitely was just such an easy thing to do, first of all, and it was such an easy romantic thing to do where it did just kind of, you know, show them that you cared and you put in that little effort to do that. Um, and it was, something to shake up a text, or calling.
Yeah,
Like
it's
it
like
was
way more
just another,
personal.
yeah, it was
And
just
it's
another
fun to get
way.
stuff in the mail. Like
Yeah.
I love text and email, but I also love ripping open an envelope that's
And
addressed to me.
I also want to say that we also did care packages a couple times, and that was nice too to get like some gifts. You know what I mean? Who doesn't love a gift? So you can definitely experiment with that.
Yeah, I think gifts are kind of fun and it does make it's exciting. I mean, these gifts don't have to be anything big. I mean, like we get it.
Oh no, yeah,
We're
yeah.
in college on a budget. But even something as simple like I know maybe once or twice my partner like called up the local like insomnia cookies and like ordered it for me if I like said I was having a bad day or something. I mean, that's just a little gesture that was nice and shows that they're thinking about me. Or just sending some snacks, just simple stuff like that. I think some of that goes a long way, and it is a good way to make it feel like they're there.
And listening to you and, reacting to what you're talking about. I think that's really important just
Yeah,
in
and it can
general
like
with relationships.
cheer you up if
Yeah.
you're down or something like that, or help you celebrate like a happy moment.
Yeah. Another thing that I think, I could touch on, I don't know about you, but we would always say good night every night. And I think,
Like text good night.
yep, text good night. We wouldn't call it. We had another call just to say, no, thank goodness. That would have been way too much. No, we just texted it. And, we definitely added like a personal thing to it, like with our, what we called each other, things like that, just to keep it personal. Don't laugh at me.
I'm not laughing. I think it just like the way you said it, like it just like, your imagination goes wild.
Yeah. So I think on one hand for me, that was maybe I was a little nervous to do that at first because I was worried about a routine. But I think looking back on it, I was definitely grateful to, have that little bit of extra check-in. And I think it wasn't anything too difficult. It was just kind of a sweet thing to do at the end of the day.
Another thing I would say is if, especially in this college situation when your lives are kind of like going two different directions, if you can find some sort of common ground, common interest, or even something like watching the same show together, I think if you, the more similarities you keep, it gives you stuff to talk about, and it does make you feel a little closer, even if you can't be there. It's fun to like talk about your predictions for new episodes or share what you thought on something. It just is a way to still feel connected, even if you're not right next to them.
No, I have a great example of that. Oh, Dan, did you want to add something? You never have anything to add. Not on this topic, I mean.
Give your example first.
I was gonna say, I know we did a shared playlist on Spotify, and I think that was just another thing where we could. I think music's so, such an easy thing, where we're all listening to music, so it was definitely easy to, share that. You didn't have to sit down and watch an episode. You were probably listening to music anyway, so you could just listen to that and you could talk about it. You could add your own songs. That was definitely a way to stay connected. Go ahead, Dan.
I would just say definitely communicate with your partner the whole time. Like if you're both starting to sense that maybe something's not working out, or if you're even just think like if one of you has to move or something, you're just thinking about going into a long distance relationship, definitely communicate, like get each other's feelings on the whole thing, and just make sure that you and your partner are both comfortable with the relationship given the circumstances of long distance or whatever it is.
I was That makes me think about some things that I've heard and things that I was glad I did. Like I heard some people talk about how you should not break up over the long distance. You should wait till you're in person to break up. And I'm glad I did that. One, because it helped solidify for me that I didn't want to continue this. Being back in person, it was like, oh yeah, it wasn't the distance. I'm just not feeling it. So that was one. And then two, I think it didn't go amazing for me, but it still went better. I think that it was in person, just being there and looking them in the eyes. And it's hard to text and call. Just being there to answer things right on the spot was definitely better. So I would definitely say do it in person if you can.
I don't know. I don't know if agree with that. I mean, like I'm not saying you should break up over text or a call, but if you're in a situation where you can't really see them easily, I don't think you should drag them along for a while and
Yeah,
make them
that's a great
think
point.
you're still in a relationship. I mean, I think you can still do it respectfully, if you're not together, and given that it is a long distance relationship, you might not be able to see them, and I think it's just you have to make the most of or the best of the situation, but definitely don't like lead them
No, that's
on.
a great point. And you could definitely say like, oh, be honest and say like, this isn't working. Maybe could we like be on break until we are in person, and then we could really talk about this and set this straight, you know? Or if you do just want to end it, you could do that too. If you know for sure. But yeah, definitely don't drag them along. That's definitely going to make it harder for the both of you in terms of getting over it. And I don't want to say wasting your time, but like, you know, that's wasting your time. Another thing, this isn't really big, but you know, I think Anna was kind of talking about this earlier, you know, like celebrating things and, you know, being there for when it doesn't go great. And, you know, I think it's just important to remember to definitely check in at certain times, like after a test, you know, you definitely want to check in, or after this or that, you definitely want to try to be there as much as you can, especially for things that kind of matter. And it might be difficult to listen sometimes to when maybe they're having a fight with their friend, and you might not really care, but you definitely have to, you know, be there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's kind of easy to get caught up in your own life, but definitely remembering the big moments and even some of the smaller details, I think really go a long way and really show the other person that you're listening and you are still interested in what's going on in their life. I guess just to wrap up, I kind of just want to reiterate that long distance relationships are work. They're hard work, kind of regardless of the situation and the distance. So it's just one of those things where I honestly think it could go either way. It almost depends on how much effort you put into it. You're ultimately going to get out of it what you put into it. If you don't make the time for them, or you don't like honor your commitment to them, then yeah, things are probably gonna fall apart. It's a lot of work, but if you think it's worth it, if you think they're worth it, then you know it's worth putting in that extra effort.
So we've talked a lot about just long distance relationships and our own personal experiences with them. Obviously, everyone's experience with long distance relationships will be different. No relationship is exactly the same, whether it's in person or long distance. So obviously take what we say with a grain of salt, but if it is working, definitely maybe try to implement some of our advice. I think that Evan and Anna both did have really good ideas of things to, or of ways to make long distance relationships work.
Debatable.
But like, if not, I definitely say communicate with your partner, see if it's working out to maybe prevent a big fallout. And I definitely just say being able to openly express how you're feeling is a great way to kind of gauge how the situation is going with your long distance relationship.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode.
Be sure to like and follow our podcast on whatever platform you're currently listening to it on.
Check out our social media linked in the description and tune in next week for even more advice.
TTYL
from IFL.
Bye!